The mud at the water's edge held the record before a single witness spoke. Two sets of heavy prints, side by side, pressed deep into the bank where the earth stayed wet and cold, and beyond them, a chaos of smaller tracks. Dozens of them, circling, fainting, scattering, regrouping. This is how you read a crime scene that happened at dawn. You start with the ground, because the ground does not lie, and because the ground remembers the order of things. The larger tracks belong to the two brothers. The smaller ones belong to 20 hyenas. And the pattern between them tells a story the footage never fully captured. A story about a stand, a cost, and the kind of transformation that leaves scars you can trace with a finger. You have seen the clip, probably. Two lion brothers, backs to the water, holding off a clan of over 20 hyenas. The numbers alone should have ended it before it began. 20 against 2 is not a fight, it is arithmetic. Yet the brothers walked away, and the hyenas scattered with the dawn, and the watering hole stayed in their possession. The question is not whether they fought. The question is how they survived long enough to make the hyenas blink. Because in the savannah, numbers usually win. So what changed on that bank? What made this particular stand different from every other losing battle a lion has ever fought? This is a battlefield report, not a nature documentary. We are going to treat that watering hole like a crime scene, and we are going to reconstruct the fight from the evidence it left behind. The tracks, the wounds, the positioning at the water's edge, and we are going to answer the question the clip leaves hanging. What did that battle turn those two brothers into? Because the real story is not the fight itself. The real story is everything that happened before the first hyena arrived, and everything that changed in the brothers. The moment they chose to stand their ground instead of run, step back from the waterline, and look at the territory the way a hyena would see it. In the dry season, water is not a luxury. It is the single most valuable currency in the landscape. Every grazer in the region funnels toward it. Every predator knows the routes, the timings, the bottlenecks. A watering hole is not just a place to drink. It is a kill site waiting to happen, a negotiation table where the strongest appetite wins. And in this particular stretch of land, the official power was not the lions. It never was. The real authority belonged to the clan. The hyenas were there first, in a sense. They had the numbers, the organization, the endurance. A hyena clan operates like a machine, coordinated, persistent, and utterly without shame about the work of survival. They do not care about the romance of the hunt. They care about the result. And when a clan of 20 moves across open ground, the message is not a question. It is a statement of intent. The brothers knew this. They had grown up inside this reality, that the water they drank and the shade they rested in were borrowed, held by tolerance, not by right. Lions hold territory by presence, by threat, by the memory of what they are willing to do. But a clan of 20 hyenas is a counterweight to that threat. The brothers could hold the water against most challenges. Against 20. The math was always going to be ugly, and yet they held. That is the detail nobody expected. That is the crack in the official story. The version where the lion is king and the hyena is a cowardly scavenger. The footage shows the reality. The brothers did not dominate that fight through raw power. They survived it through something closer to strategy. And strategy, real strategy, the kind that wins against impossible odds, is not something a tourist sees. It has to be reconstructed. So let us open the files. Let us look at the evidence the ground left us. If you have ever felt that the natural world has been edited into a cartoon, where lions are noble and hyenas are villains, and every fight has a clean winner, then you already know the unease of watching that clip. Because the real savannah does not work in morals. It works in cause and effect, in hunger and exhaustion, and the cold arithmetic of who can afford to bleed. The brothers won a fight that should have killed them. That is not a fairy tale. That is a tactical anomaly. And anomalies demand investigation. Now, look at the hyena tracks more carefully. Here is what most people miss. The tracks were not random. They formed a pattern, a circling, containing pattern, like a net being drawn around a fixed point. Hyenas do not swarm by accident. They herd, they test, they probe for weakness, and they commit only when the opening appears. 20 hyenas are not 20 individual fighters. They are one organism with 20 mouths and 20 sets of jaws, coordinated by calls, by posture, by the momentum of the group itself. That's the kind of evidence this channel is built to uncover. Subscribe if you want to keep reconstructing the real savannah, no sanitized versions. Then comment one word you'd use to describe that circling pattern. I want to see what you saw. That coordination is the real threat. 1 hyena is a nuisance. 5 is a problem. 20 is a death sentence. Unless the target understands what is happening and refuses to play the game the way the clan expects. And that is precisely where the brothers broke the pattern. But to understand how they broke it, you have to understand what was at stake. Not the water itself. Water is replaceable if you walk far enough. What was at stake was the territory around the water, the hunting ground, the shade, the claim. If the brothers lost that bank, they lost everything they had built. And losing everything for a lion is not a metaphor. It is a slow decline. Smaller kills, weaker hunts, more injuries, less tolerance from the next predator who comes looking. So the stand was not about pride. It was about survival, in the longest and most literal sense. The brothers had one advantage, and it is the advantage that every lion coalition relies on: each other. 2 brothers hunting together can bring down prey neither could manage alone. 2 brothers defending together can cover angles that a single lion cannot. The bond between coalition males is not sentiment. It is the most practical tool they own. It doubles their strength, halves their exhaustion, and gives each of them a flank that will not break. But even a coalition has limits, and 20 hyenas are designed to find those limits and exploit them. Here is what the tracks tell us about the opening phase of the fight. The brothers did not charge. They held position, backs near the water, facing the advancing line. That is the first tactical decision, and it is the one that saved them. A lion that charges into a hyena clan gets surrounded. A lion that holds its ground forces the hyenas to come to him, one at a time, through the narrowest approach. The water at their backs removed an entire direction of attack. The brothers turned the terrain into a funnel, and the hyenas, for all their numbers, could only feed fighters into that funnel a few at a time. Now watch what happens. The first hyenas test the edges, quick lunges, snapping jaws, retreats. They are not trying to kill yet. They are trying to draw a reaction. They want one of the brothers to break formation, to chase, to overextend. Because the moment a lion chases, he leaves his partner exposed, and the clan can pour into the gap. The brothers did not chase. That is the first surprise. And the second surprise is what happened when the pressure built. This is the part of the story that the footage cannot show you. The cold of the mud under your hands as you kneel to read the tracks. The iron tang of blood in the air, faint but unmistakable, carried off the water. The silence that settles when 20 hyenas stop their cacophony and focus. A silence more dangerous than any noise. The brothers were not just fighting. They were reading. Reading the hyenas, reading the terrain, reading each other. And that coordination, that silent conversation between 2 animals that have hunted and bled together for years, is what turned a losing battle into a stand. But the stand came at a cost. You can see it in the aftermath, if you look at the wounds instead of the victory. The brothers did not walk away untouched. They walked away scarred, and those scars are evidence of how close this battle came to breaking them. Here is the detail nobody expected. The fight was not won by the brothers. It was won by the hyena's own hesitation. A clan of 20 hyenas can kill a lion. They have done it, but they do not do it without paying a price, and the price is always paid in their own blood. The brothers made that price too high. They hurt enough hyenas and hurt them badly enough that the clan made the calculation every predator makes. This is not worth it. There are easier meals, there are weaker targets. And so, one by one, the hyenas broke off and the water was held. Now we have to ask the uncomfortable question. What does it actually take to make 20 hyenas decide that a fight is not worth finishing? Because the footage alone, the chaos, the snapping jaws, the dust, does not answer it. The answer is in the wounds, in the tracks, in the positioning. And the answer is uncomfortable, because it looks nothing like the story we tell ourselves about lions. Think about this carefully. The brothers did not win by being stronger. They won by being harder to break. They absorbed a level of punishment that should have collapsed a pair of lions, and they kept fighting through it, and they made the hyenas pay for every inch of ground. That is not dominance, that is endurance. And endurance, in the savannah, is often the difference between a survivor and a carcass. But here is where the story takes its final turn. The battle did not just leave scars on their bodies, it left a deeper mark. What the brothers learned about each other at that water's edge, about trust, about timing, about the willingness to stand when everything says run, did not end when the hyenas retreated. It carried forward. It changed how they hunted, how they moved, how they held their territory. The watering hole remained theirs, but the brothers who walked away from that battle were not the same brothers who had walked into it. The fight transformed them, and that transformation, more than the victory itself, is the real evidence this crime scene has to offer. So let us go back to the ground, one last time. The tracks are still there. The dust has settled, but the marks remain. Two sets of heavy prints, side by side, and beyond them, the scattered chaos of a clan that chose to leave rather than finish what it started. The brothers held the water. They paid for it in blood and scar tissue, and in the process, they became something the savannah does not often produce, a coalition that could not be broken because it had already been tested at the edge of death and refused to crack. When a coalition refuses to break, the evidence demands a closer look. Subscribe and you'll be on the ground for the next crime scene we reconstruct, because the savannah isn't done testing. What name would you give this transformation? Drop a word in the comments. Call it what you saw happen at the water's edge. The question we have to leave open is this: what happens to a pair of lions who have survived something that should have killed them? Do they grow reckless, or do they grow wise? The evidence suggests the latter, but the savannah is always watching, always waiting, and the next test is always closer than it appears. That is the nature of this world. The battle is over. The transformation is real. And somewhere out there, the next clan is already circling. Wait, rewind the fight to the moment before the first bite landed, because the tracks show something crucial that the clip blurs. The brothers did not take the same role. One of them stood slightly forward, closer to the incoming line. The other hung back, half a stride behind, angled toward the flank. That is not random positioning. That is a division of labor, written in the mud before the chaos began. The forward brother was the anchor. The rear brother was the reaction force. And that split-second allocation of roles, decided somewhere in their shared history, not by any signal a tourist could see, is the first layer of evidence that this was never a desperate scramble. It was a plan. The plan only works if both brothers trust the other to hold his line. A hyena clan is built to break that trust. They separate, they isolate, they turn a pair into two singletons. But the brothers refused the separation. Watch the geometry again. When a hyena lunged at the anchor, the rear brother stepped up, not forward, closing the gap between them, denying the clan the opening they were probing for. When the pressure swung to the rear brother, the anchor mirrored the move. They pivoted around a fixed center, like a door swinging on a hinge. The watering hole was the hinge, and a hinge does not break. Here is what the ground tells us about the hinge. The heavy prints stayed close together throughout the fight, never more than a body length apart, sometimes touching. That compact spacing is tactical gold. It means neither brother ever fought alone, even for a heartbeat. It means every hyena that committed to a bite on one brother had to account for the other brother's jaws arriving a second later. The clan could not isolate a single target. And a hyena clan that cannot isolate its prey loses its greatest advantage. But that close spacing came with a price. When two large animals fight back-to-back in tight quarters, they cannot swing freely. They cannot bring their full weight into a strike without risking the other. The brothers accepted that constraint, fought deliberately, economically, conserving energy, because the alternative was the open ground where numbers win. Every step of that fight, they traded mobility for mutual protection, and the trade worked. It is the oldest trick in the book, and the hardest to pull off under pressure. Trust the animal beside you more than you fear the ones in front. Now look at the hyena tracks again, and notice what is missing. There are no deep, grinding claw marks near the brothers' position. There is no sign of a sustained, coordinated grapple at close range. The clan harried, feinted, snapped, but they never committed to a full weight-on-target takedown. Why? Because a hyena that commits to a takedown must expose its own head and neck to the other brother. And the other brother was always there, always close, always ready. The hyenas read that reality in the first minute of the fight. The clan was not facing two lions. They were facing a single, four-legged weapon with two brains. That is the second layer of evidence, and it changes the story entirely. The brothers did not win because the hyenas were cowardly. The hyenas were cautious because the brothers made caution the only rational choice. Every hyena that stepped into the kill zone understood that it was volunteering its own life to test the weapon, and 20 hyenas, however coordinated, are not 20 volunteers for suicide. They are 20 survivors looking for an opening. The brothers denied the opening, and denial, repeated enough times, becomes a strategy. But strategy has a metabolism. It burns through the body that executes it. And the brothers paid that metabolic cost in a currency the footage never shows: exhaustion. A lion's body is built for short, explosive effort. A burst of speed, a tackle, a bite. Not for prolonged, low-grade resistance. The fight at the water's edge demanded exactly that. Minutes of sustained alertness, constant micro-adjustments, jaw after jaw snapping just short of the mark. Every feint the brothers did not chase was a small victory, but every feint they absorbed was a small tax, and taxes compound. Here is the detail that should make you uneasy. The brothers held the water, yes, but they held it on borrowed time. If the hyenas had pressed for another 10 minutes, another 5, the exhaustion curve would have crossed the survival line. A lion that has spent its reserves cannot outpace a hyena that is still fresh. A lion that cannot run cannot protect its flank. The brothers did not just win a fight. They won a race against their own fatigue. And the margin between victory and a very different outcome was measured in breaths, not in strength. So we have to ask, what kept them going when their bodies were screaming to stop? The track evidence gives us a clue. Look at the spacing again. The prints never widen. Even as the fight dragged on, the brothers kept their dimension, kept their hinge, kept the trust that the other would hold. Fatigue breaks coordination first. When an animal is exhausted, it forgets the plan, forgets the partner, forgets everything but the immediate threat. The brothers never forgot. That is not normal. That is trained, built over years of hunts, years of shared fights, years of learning exactly how far the other can be pushed before he breaks. And that training, that bond, is the answer to the main question of this entire scene. The brothers survived because they had rehearsed this moment their whole lives without knowing it. Every hunt together, every scrap over a carcass, every dawn patrol of their territory was a rehearsal for the stand at the water. The hyenas brought numbers. The brothers brought history. And on that bank, history outweighed arithmetic. But history has a weight too. And weight, in a fight like this, is carried in the body long after the dust settles. The brothers walked away from the water with their lives, but their bodies held the receipt for the battle. In torn muscle, in broken claws, in the deep tissue bruises that never make the clip but govern every movement for weeks after. The evidence of the cost is not in the wounds you can see in the footage. It is in the things the brothers could not do in the days that followed. The hunts they could not run, the distance they could not cover, the threats they could only answer with a snarl instead of a charge. That is the truth the battlefield report has to hold. Victory and cost are not opposites. They are the same event, measured twice. The brothers won the water. They paid for it with reserves they will never fully recover. And in the weeks that followed, every predator in the region read that cost in the brothers' movements. The slight limp, the hesitation before the chase, the way they favored one side when they lay down. The savannah does not keep secrets. It reads the body the way a detective reads a crime scene. And the body of every animal is a record of every fight it has ever survived. But wait, there is more. And this is where the story bends in a direction the clip does not prepare you for. The cost of the fight did not only weaken the brothers, it redefined them. In the aftermath, the brothers did not retreat into caution. They did not shrink from their territory. They expanded their tolerance, held the water longer each day, pushed the boundary of their patrol a little further, answered challenges with a confidence that bordered on defiance. The survivors of a near-death stand often behave like animals that have nothing left to lose, and an animal that has nothing left to lose is the most dangerous creature in the savannah. The hyena clan understood this immediately. The tracks from the days after the fight show the clan giving the water a wide berth, not because they had forgotten the brothers, but because they had learned a new version of them. The clan did not need another lesson. They had the memory of the blood and the dust, and the impossible stand seared into their collective history. The brothers had become a story, And a story once told is harder to kill than any single lion. So the real transformation at the crime scene is not the physical healing. It is the reputation that travels on the wind faster than any animal can run. The brothers that walked away from the water carried a legend with them. A legend built from the shattered expectations of 20 hyenas. And in the savannah, legend is a form of territory. It is ground you hold without standing on it. It is the reason the next predator thinks twice before testing you. It is the reason the water stayed theirs, not because they were the strongest, but because they were the ones who had already proven they would not break. That legend is the real territory they hold now, and you just walked the crime scene that built it, track by track. Subscribe if you want to reconstruct more cases where the evidence refuses to give you what you expected. What I want to know is this: when the story turned from a simple brawl into a reputation war, did your verdict shift? Drop one word in the comments. Legend if you think the memory was the real weapon, or survival if the body is still all that matters. Now, the uncomfortable part. Every fight changes the fighter, but it also changes the witnesses. And you, watching the clip, reading the tracks, doing the work of reconstruction, you are a witness too. You came to this scene expecting a simple story. The noble lion, the cowardly hyena, the clean victory. What the evidence shows you instead is something murkier. Two exhausted survivors who won by refusing to lose, against a clan that left because the price was too high. Neither side is noble. Neither side is a villain. They are all just animals doing the arithmetic of survival, and the arithmetic is never clean. The savannah does not reward courage. It rewards the correct calculation, repeated at the right moment. The brothers calculated. The hyenas recalculated. And the only difference between them was a few seconds of trust. The trust that the brother beside you will hold, even when your body is screaming to run. That is the verdict of this battlefield report. Not a story of heroes, a story of timing, trust, and the brutal efficiency of a bond forged in blood. And that bond, here is the detail that keeps the loop open, is not permanent. Trust is a living thing. It must be maintained, reinforced, proven again and again. The brothers won this stand, but the next test is already being written. A new challenge, a new clan, a new season of hunger. The question is not whether they will fight again. The question is whether the trust that saved them at the water will still hold when the next impossible stand arrives. The savannah does not close its files. It just adds new pages. The evidence at this crime scene was never hidden. It was written in the mud, in the spacing of the prints, in the wounds that healed into scars. The brothers did not defeat 20 hyenas through brute force, and they did not survive through luck. They survived because they had spent their lives building the thing that could not be broken under pressure. And the proof is not in the victory. The proof is in what the battle left behind. The worn earth at the hinge, the wide berth the clan gave the water afterwards, the measured confidence in the brothers' stride as they reclaimed their patrol. Every fight tells you something about the fighter. This one told the savannah that the brothers could not be isolated, could not be rattled, could not be made to break formation. The clan tested every tactic in its book and found the book insufficient. That verdict was not delivered in a single moment. It was delivered in 1,000 small denials, a lunge unanswered, a feint ignored, a flank protected without hesitation. Each denial added a line to the brothers' reputation, and by the time the dust settled, the reputation was heavier than any single blow. Walk the bank one final time. The prints have faded now, softened by wind and the comings and goings of other animals. But the story they told is not subject to erosion. Two brothers stood at this water against odds that should have ended them, and they held because they trusted each other more than they feared the clan. That is the whole report. 20 hyenas brought a strategy. The brothers brought something the strategy could not account for. The savannah reads the outcome, but the outcome was never the point. The point was the choice to stand. The hinge on the waterline. There is no quicker way to sum this. Two sets of heavy prints, never more than a body length apart, pressed into mud that kept the memory of the battle. Beyond them, the scattered chaos of a clan that chose to leave. The brothers did not win with fury. They won with geometry. A compact, unforgiving shape that turned 20 jaws into a funnel that could only feed 2 at a time. That shape was not invented in the heat of the moment. It was built in every hunt, Every shared kill, every dawn patrol where one brother learned to read the other's intent before a single muscle moved. The savannah calls it instinct, but instinct is just history repeated until it becomes reflex. And reflex, in the language of this battlefield report, is the final witness, the silent testimony that the stand at the water was not luck, but the inevitable output of a bond forged over years. Kneel at the blurred prints one last time. They are fading, softened by wind, but they still hold the truth of the stand. 20 hyenas brought a strategy of encirclement and exhaustion. The brothers brought the one counter that strategy cannot compute, the knowledge that neither would break, because both had already chosen not to. And when the clan finally understood that, the fight was already over. Not won by force, solved by proof. The water held. The scars healed into maps. And on that bank the answer was written not in violence, but in the absolute certainty of two animals standing together. That is the crime scene closed.